You're listening to a Severus TV podcast hosted by Vijayraj Singh. I'm going to begin this podcast in an unusual manner. There's no welcome to this and welcome to that. I have a very special guest, a very dear friend of mine. I want to discuss two very specific things which will trigger some of you listening to this right now. One is the illusion of control, and the second thing is moving forward and not letting your past control you. Now that's something that all of us, it's like an elephant in the room for most of us. We don't like to discuss it, we don't acknowledge it, and then we try and move forward with it, and then we realize how heavy that baggage is. So I'm joined here with my dear friend Aadhar Malhotra. Hello, Aadhar.
Yeah.
Aadhar, most of you would know him listening to this. Most of you know me, have heard of him. He's a fitness trainer. He's a martial artist. He's quite an inspiration to me. His not only his success story, but his art, his dedication, his passion to what he does. Aadhar trains all over Delhi now. He's very popular. He's also coming out with his own book. So Aadhar, I know I blindsided you a bit with the topic.
Actually, I'm just going to cut me here and just say it's not an elephant in the room, it's an elephant wearing a tutu in a China shop. That's what it is.
Very well put. So, I know we're on that older edge of that youth curve now.
Mm-hmm.
In a few months, I don't think we'll hardly classify as youth anymore. But
The big trio.
the big trio, and obviously it's my 25th birthday this year. But for you guys, I mean. But
Are you calling me old, Viju?
No, I wouldn't dare call you anything, but judging by the sheer distance that you are with me in this podcast right now, and all the equipment that is at stake, which can be destroyed, which I will have to pay for.
I am not the Hulk.
So anyway.
Also, don't believe him, I don't like violence. Contrary to popular belief.
Of course. All the peace-loving movies and all the messengers of peace and non-violence that we discuss every day, every week. People like the Jackie Chans and the Sylvester Stallones of the world, who just you see Stallone and you say, "My goodness, I'm a man of peace." Here is a towering example of peaceful ways. Commando really made me question violence.
He could be he could be the next Dalai Lama.
Commando is actually Schwarzenegger, but still like that. So coming back to the topic, if someone like about 8 years younger to us, and I'm not going to say how old, let the viewers guess how much 8 years younger is, but if someone like 8 years younger comes and gives you the same kind of baggage you've dealt with, or we've dealt with, why should I say you, we've all been there. What is the kind of advice you're going to tell these people to look back on, especially when it comes to your passion, following your calling in life? First of all, how do you identify something like that?
Strangely enough, it's really simple. It's definitely not easy. And I keep making that distinction between simple and easy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is simple. It's as simple as making a choice.
Mm-hmm.
But that choice is a very hard choice to follow through with. But coming to the point of identifying your calling, your passion, or something, it's going to feel like you could lose yourself doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You will lose the concept of time. You will lose the concept of, am I doing well or am I not doing well? Because
it doesn't feel like work.
It doesn't feel like work, and not even work. It's more about you continuously see yourself change into something that you feel is the real you. And I'm gonna sound very weird to a lot of people, but a lot of us have been conditioned to believe a bunch of things.
Yes,
right. You're supposed to be organized. Everything needs to have a certain return. You're supposed to be good at something. Expertise, etc., 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 etc. But the fact of the matter is that there are certain things you're naturally good at, and there are certain things that you're really, really not good at. Now that is defined in comparison. But then what are you comparing with? You're comparing with someone else.
So I like how you put it, because I was just building up to that. The reason I asked you that question was building up to this. That after a certain point you realize, oh shit, nothing went according to plan. I had planned this, I was going to do this, I was going to take over the world, and my dream woman or my dream man is going to be right beside me all throughout, and we're never going to have any issues ever again, and all the people who I considered my enemies are going to be removed.
Yeah, newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. So I want to just examine when you're right in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And you're about to go nuts. That is where, after a point, you look within, and then you move into a practice. You moved into martial arts. I love the way how you describe that this is preparing for a fight that would never happen. 2 minutes or 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
30-second fight that would never happen.
Yeah.
And I love the way that's put, because it just sums up the life choices that you make, which is not necessarily exactly what it seems on the face, but there's a whole internal undercurrent to the. So
actually, I think what you're saying. I think I get what you're saying, but I'll tell you why I keep saying that. So the thing is that fight may never happen. Okay. And I mean, a lot of us kind of go into this mode of, this place is not safe, that place is not safe, you're just not safe. But guess what, guys? I mean, you're not in the Dark Ages, you're definitely not in prehistoric times where you had to hunt to eat. And you had wild animals, you were literally living in the jungle. You have civilization now.
Yeah.
I think the biggest threat to you or anyone else right now is sitting or sugar. Or mosquitoes, or I don't know, a bunch of other things. And I mean, obviously, I'm overgeneralizing, and no, I'm not discounting the other factors like stress and loneliness and other things. But then that, my friends, is an internal matter.
But stress, loneliness, and self-doubt is the first thing that hits you when you're going through that reality check.
Yeah.
So, tell me, we've bounced out of it and a lot of people we know. I mean, I'm not putting a crown on the two of us here, but we have bounced out of it in our own ways. And not everyone realizes that everyone goes through this. You can live in denial and delay it till you're 40 years old and have a midlife crisis, or acknowledge who you are, acknowledge that everything is a mess and that's why it works. And it's all part of the plan.
Yeah.
And in fact, when it's all going in a linear fashion, when everything seems to be stalled, when you go through that motion, it's quite intimidating. You feel very alone. You tend to go into this whole victimization mode.
You tend to get a little off place because you're in that.
So that's exactly where a discipline comes in, whereas you can learn a martial art, or you can train your mind to be calm. I mean, a lot of people do Vipassana these days. I've never done it. I don't know how that works. But Rahul Gandhi did it. It seemed to work for him.
So my dad did it at some point.
So I guess Vipassana at some point does help.
See, I think, so the reason why I think something like that works is because you're looking for an insight. At the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. I'm going to step back a bit and go back to that whole point of how you feel when you're in that spot where everything in your mind palace, thank you Sherlock, is frankly just, it's all collapsed right in front of your eyes. Nothing's going according to plan. You're not where you want to be, you're not who you want to be, you're not with the person you want to be, you're not making enough money, you're not doing the things you want, you're questioning your life. You're like, I've spent so much time, either I've spent too much time working, or I've spent too much time not working, and it's all about, it's all about you're not where you want to be. The important point to realize is you're in that spot specifically because that is exactly where you need to be.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where you need to be, simply because when you get there, when everything has fallen flat, and some people are, mind you, a lot smarter. They're able to see this before it happens. But for the general public, including...
God, I envy those people.
Tell me about it. But for the general public, like yours truly, you have to hit a spot where you're in the corner you cannot fight, and you actually have to say, okay, I am giving in now. I am not going to fight this. I'm going to see where it goes.
Yes, because
and that's not the same as that's not the same as giving up. I think that's an important distinction to make. You're not giving up. You're not quitting. You're giving in. You're taking that time to see where this is headed, and I think I'll equate it to a fight, considering that's the background that everyone knows. If anyone's familiar with how fights go, competition fights and not fights. So combat sport matches usually end up in whatever sport you follow. Usually end up with a 1 minute break in between rounds. And if that's not the case, then you're going to end up in a spot where you're up against the ropes or in a corner. The other guy is hammering at you, and you're at that spot for a split second where it's like where nothing's happening. You're just trying to find a dominant position. And then you go that, okay, so far, this is what has happened. I've been hit, I've been, knocked the fuck out, but I have to win this. I only have two choices. I either win this, I, change whatever I'm thinking about. I change my game plan, and I adapt to this. I think the correct word is adapt. Or I go with whatever I had in mind and then get my ass beat.
So that's precisely one of the key reasons why we decided to get you on this podcast and do this podcast together. We're going to do many more. I wanted people listening in to walk away with something they can use. And most of the times people equate problems in their life as, life hit me and I've been beaten up and I've been done this. And it's there's a lot of that kind of language. And when you have a trained fighter giving you advice on how to tackle these kind of things, you can extrapolate that advice into tackling real problems in life. And trust me, I'm not generalizing here. It really does work when you get into the core principle of why even a fighter trains himself to deal with heavy blows and different kind of opponents. They are trained in that way. Can you explain a bit of the psychological aspect of your training?
I'm going to give you two ideas. So, getting a little bit into history right now. So, fighting for sport has always been a thing. Okay, it's been a thing that's settled issues. It's been a thing that's been used as play. It's been, it's been something that a lot of people use to stay physically fit and obviously understand what their skills are. And kind of, in a way, it helps you dig deep and see as to who you are under pressure. We're a lot more civilized now, and that's also to an extent of being really, really soft. And that's not a judgment I'm making. Before people get that wrong, it's not a judgment call. It's great to not trust me. It's great to not get hit. But part of the reason why some people train is to look within. It's a great discipline to have from the point of view of I want to see that if I am in a spot where I am physically taking the hits and still standing and still surviving, I think everything else can fall into place. Because I think the biggest misconception is the fighters are violent people. Sure, some are. I mean, some people are. I'll be lying if I say they aren't. But they're not inherently people who enjoy violence. They enjoy a good fight because it's a competition, it's a contest. They like competing. They like to see, it's like that daily win, right?
But just like war is like the last resort.
War is the last resort, yeah. But for someone who's training in anything, I think if you look at it from the point of view of just working out, let's step out of fighting for a second, get into working out, right? Why do people want to work out? So some people want to work out because they've got a goal. They want to lose weight. They want to, look a certain way, and that's going back into expectation or whatever. Some people work out purely because they realize that if I get this, if I do this at a certain hour of the day, and that this could be anything, that could be working out. I equate it to working out. It could be I wake up and I make my bed, or I wake up and I meditate, or I wake up and I read, or I write a certain amount at that fixed time, or I get a schedule done a certain way. That's a win. That's a daily win that you have to look back and anchor yourself in. I still have this. I have this to look at and feel good about. Why fighters train comes from a similar place, because it's about getting that win at the end of the day. it's a win against
and getting
physical
into the
odds.
habit of sort of dealing with obstacles
Pressure.
one by one and dealing with pressure. And so, folks, that's the reason why I do recommend martial arts, is because you're going to get the fitness and you're going to get that as a byproduct.
It's a byproduct.
The real teaching it gives you is conflict management and the art of conflict management. So I'm going to throw a real tough question at you right now, which is, I can deal with detractors, I can deal with haters, I can deal with those kind of as in me personally, I can deal with them very well, but I'm just saying from a generic sense, I can deal with demons outside. How do I deal with things which are my own? Like if I have demons within, that things like low self-esteem, or
you
when
had to throw that one, didn't you?
Yeah. So how does one go past those kind of obstacles?
You will have to be in a spot where you realize that all of your internal demons are coming from a place of expectation, and
the illusion
dissatisfaction, and the illusion of control. And I think that's the important one, because we feel that we can control things. To a certain degree, that is true. I think Alan Watts put it beautifully, and coincidentally, I heard that in a song. So he says that you don't need to control yourself. You don't need to be in control of everything. Because, well, for starters, that's not possible. It can't be done. You have to take things as what they are and understand that while it's great to strategize and plan, your plan will be fluid enough to account for things that may not go your way. Because ultimately, what do we want? Right? We want to get somewhere. Now, the beauty of, I'm going to be contradicting what I say, because I say that, don't look at the destination, just have fun in the process. And stick with that process, because it's going to get you somewhere. So let go, if you let go of that control, right, eventually, at some point, if you're on the right path, you'll get there. That path is just not going to be a straight line.
I'm just not going to leave you hanging on that question. I'll attempt to answer it myself as well, because I know you're going to throw that question at me. So I might as well address it in the podcast. So I think I have the same approach that you had, which is that you cannot control outcomes. You cannot control people. You can only control your response. So I suppose even in fighting, how you respond to a hit or a tackle versus how you react to it, there's a big difference there. So even when tackling your own demons, if you just change the nature of your response, even if it's someone at home who's bugging the shit out of you, or if someone at work, or if so if your own response changes, that person is totally puzzled. Because a lot of these control games, people love to play with one another, and I've seen it with my friends, and I've seen it in the workplace.
It's very territorial that way.
And I've seen the minute you stop giving the response that person is expecting, the person is totally confused. Okay, how the hell do I do? And that puts an end to that game right there.
Exactly.
So I guess another way of dealing with your own internal demons is the same way. That Seinfeld episode, that's a great example. George says, I'm going to do everything opposite of what I usually do. And then he gets the girl, and then he gets the dream job, and then that's a classic example of how this principle works. Like you just change your responses, and you just change the whole way that you would tackle such a thing. I love how I've just been passed a note saying that the control freak is giving all of this advice. Anyway, I'm no control freak. This is advocate Udit Arora passing notes and being generally annoying. I'm not saying anything in the podcast. So you can if you hear the occasional grunt and sigh, that's neither mean or Aadhar, that's Udit.
Hi Udit, how you doing?
Good, man.
So at least they heard you. There's gonna be like millions of people listening to this.
There's a voice to the name.
No,
but I think it also comes back to when you're talking about demons, right? Not to drop that point of, yes, people have shit to deal with.
Yeah.
Yes, you've gone through things that for you were absolute hell, which is absolutely true.
And you're not alone.
Right? But yes, it's an individual journey because we may not have gone through the same experiences. We may not have gone through the same experiences. We may not have gone through the same situations. Our responses may not have been the same. But by and large, right, you're not alone because everyone is dealing with that internal voice. And that internal voice, I'll be honest with you, is not, the moment you sit down and look at it for what it is, it's not a demon. It's not you saying that, it's not that voice that goes, I'm not enough or whatever. It's a scared version of you that just feels that, okay, if I do this, am I going to be safe? Because I think it's an important distinction to make that your brain and your heart, metaphorically, are two sides to you. Your heart will always have a very different decision, which is where spontaneity comes from, which is where you're going to make the decision to ask someone out randomly, which is where you're going to go and bungee jump without thinking or planning, because if you do, you're not going to do it. Which is where you decide that, okay, I am going to take that trip to wherever the fuck I want to go, and I don't care how much it costs. Or I'm going to go sign up for a fight and go fight.
See what happens.
I've
loved our conversation today, so I'm going to sum up our entire conversation just to give the listeners an exact takeaway from this, which is that shit is going to happen. Whether you play by the book or you don't, or you just sit at home, shit's gonna happen. You go out and deal with stuff, shit is gonna happen. Accept it.
Yeah.
And change your responses if something's bothering you.
Yeah.
And that's a big key to changing your experiences. And I can get into a whole spiritual side of it. We'll discuss it in the next podcast. But I want to keep it Aadhar centric because it's been hard enough to get a hold of him to do this podcast because of his schedule. You can join his classes in South Delhi. I'll leave a note at the end of this podcast how you can get in touch with him. All of this advice is primarily coming from people who have tackled the same things in life.
Or are tackling.
Still tackling. And that's the key. I want the listeners to take away things that they can use rather than just lectures. And that's one of the things I try to do, is not to turn the podcast into a lecture. I tried to record a podcast on Julian Assange and the deep state, where I want to do this whole political side with my skill. And yesterday I ended up sounding like a 80s Doordarshan newsreader. And it sounded so bad that I didn't even feel like editing it. I'm going to re-record it now and try and get it out. Mrigank, of course, has another podcast to do with me.
I think Udit is right. That is where the control freak comes from.
But
Doordarshan podcast.
I know I was spot on.
Yeah.
No, so Udit comes from a long history of bullying, which he has been subjected to at my expense, and his expense actually. It cost me nothing. But in any case, he's also sort of learned how to deal with it. He's toughened up, so he has a lot to thank me for, because he had a very compassionate bully who taught him life lessons and how to deal with it. You're welcome with it. So I'm gonna wrap up.
Maybe we should do a podcast on only Vijayraj Singh and Severus TV.
So
then we'll come up with all the facts for you.
Yeah.
Wrapping up now, tune in to Severus TV. This is Vijayraj Singh. Thank you Aadhar Malhotra for joining us. Thank you Udit Arora for breathing beside me. Join in our next podcast. Thank you. Bye bye. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Hubhopper, and YouTube. This podcast was produced by Mrigank Saluja and brought to you by Severus TV and Severus Podcasts.